Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Mind Your Puckin' Business with your host, Jeffrey Krensman.
Thank you, Dougie Sticks. Good morning. Good morning. And coming to you, as always, from the beautiful studios of Undefeated Media here in Bergen County, New Jersey. We're back in kind of like weird, are we in the winter mode? It's a little bit cold this morning here in the Northeast, but welcome.
Sunny skies.
Sunny skies. And you know what?
Plus.
Speaking of those skies, if there's no white stuff falling from those skies, we'll take it.
Absolutely.
It's a win. And there better not be white stuff falling in May. So thank you for joining us on the Mind Your Puckin' Business podcast. We're sponsored by the Ridgewood YMCA. Check them out. Good people down there in Ridgewood, New Jersey. And this is episode number Treinta y Tres. If you are on the Spanish dial today. Dougie, did I say that 33 okay in Spanish?
Did you say Treinta y Tres or 23?
I think I said E-Trace. Is that okay? Professor?
32, 30, no, it's 33. When you get to, it's 35. 30. Once you hit 5, it's the
Okay.
E.
Well,
So
close enough.
33.
We try.
You did
here.
great, and you did great. Just take out the extra Y.
I tried. Hope you're listening to us on one of our four most popular ways you can listen to us every other week, and that is Facebook, YouTube, iTunes, or Spotify, one of those. And you can always send your questions, and I'm going to tell you we have a lot of questions that we need to get to today that was sent in. You can always reach us at mypbshow@gmail.com, and if you're following on the camera feed, on Facebook or YouTube, you can see that perfectly spelled out banner of our email address, mypbshow@gmail.com, on the screen. So how was your last 2 weeks, Dougie Sticks?
Sad. Yeah, I not enough MYPB in my life.
Well, I hate to tell you this,
Uh-oh.
and you may not be happy with where we're going on this show today. There has been so much Ranger stuff going on that we have no guests today, and this is going to be like straight up New York Rangers. So get your expertise cap on and get ready to talk New York Ranger hockey you love.
Absolutely.
You ready?
Yeah.
Okay.
We're diving right in.
We're going right in.
We're not even gonna chit chat for a little bit.
Nope.
Nothing happened with Tyler or food or Chick-fil-A's.
No, although we did make a Panda Express and Chick-fil-A run a couple weeks ago. No, we're gonna get right into it, and I got some. And actually, before we get into it, I will say this because it kind of dovetails into it. Last week, when all this Ranger stuff went down, I got a couple things where people were annoyed we weren't on last week because they tried to. They said they were wanting to hear what our take was.
Yeah.
Notice they said our take on the Rangers. So you're doing something right, selling yourself.
Guilty by association.
Guilty by association. So we are every other week biweekly program now. Now I do think it does look like in the summer we will return to the every week format, and then certainly in the fall as we deal with the NFL again and we try to make you money, we will be back to every week. But we're still every other week, and we were not on last week when all this Ranger stuff happened. So we're gonna recap it in a sense, but we're gonna give you my feelings on a lot of it. And one thing I try to do when I walk in the hollowed doors of Undefeated Media on Tuesday mornings, right? I try, and it's not easy. I try to be objective. Like, I don't want to be the guy that comes on here and the Rangers lose and just bash the refs. You know, I don't want to be that guy. It's not what people want to hear.
Sure.
I've got to be objective.
Absolutely.
So I'm going to be objective, and there are going to be certain things I'm going to say that some Ranger fans are going to get annoyed with me. And I know this because I know they disagree with me, but I walked through those famous doors down the hall this morning. I need to be objective.
Absolutely.
Okay. So last Monday night, again, we're taping the show today on Tuesday, May 11th. Last Monday night, May 3rd, the Rangers had a home game at Madison Square Garden versus the Washington Capitals. At that point, going into the game, the Rangers were not mathematically eliminated, but they really were. Like, so many random things would have to happen. They weren't making the playoffs, right? They'd have to win out, and a million other things would have to happen. So they technically were still playing to make the playoffs, but they weren't really going to make it.
This was the game where on the first puck drop,
no, we're gonna get there.
Oh, okay. I'm my bad. My bad.
I'm impressed.
I knew you would be.
I mean, geez. So the Rangers are playing the Capitals, and it is the second period of this game, and I gotta say, it's a pretty boring game to watch. You know, if the Rangers are sitting there and they have a 1% chance of making the playoffs, you'd like to think they'd come out with maximum effort. It was a pretty darn boring game to watch. And Tom Wilson, who's a player on the Capitals, is a good hockey player. He's not a guy that's going to light up the score sheet in his career. He's a good hockey player, but he's also crazy. Like, he has a switch that goes off in his head. He's been suspended multiple times in his career for some crazy incidents, but he is a good player, and he fills a role for the Washington Capital team. And there was a situation behind the net in the second period where the Washington Capital goalie covered the puck and kind of mayhem broke loose. Of course, centered in that was Tom Wilson, because that's what that sort of player is known to do. And in the end, it kind of became a chaotic scene. Artemi Panarin, who is one of the Rangers' best players, if not the best player, I guess you could debate that between Panarin or Zibanejad, was injured in this scuffle. He kind of got, I would say, tackled like a wrestling move on ice skates, remember, by Tom Wilson, and was injured. So the league comes out on Tuesday to announce what the discipline will be for Tom Wilson. Now, coincidentally, wouldn't you know, on Wednesday, the following night, these two teams are going to meet again, right? So the NHL decides, George Paros is the director of the NHL Player Safety Department, decides that what happened that night was not suspension worthy. And they decided that what they were going to do was fine Tom Wilson the maximum that he could be fined for the penalty that he got assessed by the referee, which was a $5,000 fine. Now, you know that when you are a multi-million-dollar athlete and you get fined $5,000, that's like somebody giving you a parking ticket today for a penny. You just don't care, right? It's annoying, but you really don't care. You're not going to fight it. Now, Ranger Nation goes ballistic, okay? How could he injure Artemi Panarin? What he did, and it's chaos on Tuesday, okay? Now, Tuesday night, after the NHL rules in the afternoon that Tom Wilson will not be suspended, the Rangers decide to put out a statement basically destroying the league and saying that George Paros is not fit for the job. Okay. Now, that's not going to sit well with the NHL, right? At all. Okay. So let's talk about what happened here with Wilson. Should he have been suspended? I'm going to get a lot of angry people at me and say I'm not really sure that he should have been. I've rewatched this play a lot. I rewatched it probably 8 times last night, to the point where my wife doesn't want to see me watch it again. But yes, it was chaotic. It was a hockey scrum after the whistle. Was he over the line? Yes. Should maybe he be suspended based on his track record? Yes. But if he didn't have that kind of track record, I'm not sure that a player would be suspended. So now you have the argument, well, he injured Artemi Panarin, right? So he injured your best player. Why is he not suspended? Here's where we don't know some information. That night, the Rangers lost, right? So they were officially eliminated. They had 3 games left after that game, and the Rangers said Artemi Panarin is out for the remainder of the season. But the remainder of the season is 3 meaningless games. So if the games were meaningful, right, if they had a chance to win out or whatever, maybe Panarin would have played. You know, we don't know the severity of his injury. And because we live in a world, and you and I deal with this with the NFL in the fall with injury reports, when someone's hurt, they just say, well, he has an upper body injury or a lower body injury. He has a lower body injury. Well, does that mean that he tore his ACL, or does it mean he has a bruised toe? There's 2 different things, right?
True. Very true.
So we don't really know how the severity of the Panarin injury was. What the Rangers did wrong here was this statement. Now, this is where we lead into the other half of the fiasco of last week, and maybe even, well, definitely the more meaningful of the 2 incidents last week. The Rangers put out this statement, as we talked about, that was just completely out of line. And it's the sort of thing where, like, you have a knee-jerk reaction to something, and then you need to stop and think, is this the right idea? Right? Okay, let's try and screw the NHL and put this statement out and embarrass them. But there's got to be a point before you hit submit on your browser and you put the statement out there that you sit back and you say to yourself, okay, maybe this is not the best idea to do. And they didn't do that. So now we go into Wednesday, right? Now the Rangers are playing their last home game of the season at night versus the Capitals. All right. Now, you know, there's going to be bad blood, right? Tom Wilson just injured Artemi Panarin 48 hours earlier. The Rangers have made it beyond clear that they're not happy he's not suspended. So what do you think is going to happen? You apparently know the answer, and I'm impressed. So the puck drops on Wednesday night.
Chaos. Absolute chaos.
Right. So the game starts with 3 fights right off the face-off. The 2 wings go at it. The 2 centers go at it. And the first period is full of just nonstop fighting. Now, Tom Wilson, the second he steps on the ice, now he didn't start that game. The second he steps on the ice has Brendan Smith, probably the Rangers' best fighter, but he's not a good fighter, basically chase him across the ice down into the Washington end and drop the gloves. So we can move on from the incident. All right. Artemi Panarin, well, I'm sure this injury is not severe enough that he won't be back in October when they play again.
Mm-hmm.
Can we just move on from it? Yes, it was annoying. I get it. You can argue he could be suspended. You can argue he couldn't. But we got to move on. And doing the statement was a little bit over the top.
Yeah.
Probably felt good when you hit the submit button, like, eat it. But it probably was not the right idea. So now we go to Wednesday.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to take you through Wednesday, through the day that I lived. All right. On Wednesday, we've talked about now with the coronavirus world, my kids are only in school till 1 o'clock. All right. So a lot of days, probably 3 or 4 days of the week, I got to pick them up at 1 o'clock. All right. That was one of those days last week.
Mm-hmm.
So I picked up the kids. I go home. It's like 1:30. And I get a text from somebody that says Jeff Gordon, who's the general manager of the New York Rangers, and John Davidson, who is the team president, has been fired. Now, when the guy sent it to me, I didn't even think much of it because I figured he was just being an idiot because that's what this person can do who texted it to me.
Uh-huh.
I didn't think anything of it. Well, then I get an email, not an email, about 6 text messages 10 minutes later. Why did the Rangers do that? To which point I'm like, what is going on here? Right.
Mm-hmm.
So now James Dolan has decided, who owns the Rangers,
Mm-hmm.
as you know, he's made his money in life from Cablevision, that he's going to fire the team president, John Davidson, and the team general manager, Jeff Gordon. Now, right away, it's beyond shocking. But everybody, rightly so, tries to play detective and says, well, this has to be because of the incident Monday night. Because there were reports on Tuesday that when the Rangers put out this statement that Jeff Gordon and John Davidson distanced themselves from it. They didn't want anything to do with it. So was this a case of the owner of the team being annoyed that his 2 employees basically didn't want to do what he wanted to do and put the statement out and get rid of them?
So when you say it, I thought it was the opposite. Like we're getting like the NHL came down on the Rangers.
Well, they
right?
did. We're getting it. Yes. So now the NHL decided on Wednesday as well. And you knew there would be discipline coming for the Rangers.
But they didn't want anything to do with the statement.
They didn't want the 2 people they fired, Jeff Gordon and John Davidson, made it clear they wanted nothing to do with it. But the team, because the owner above them still wanted to put it out, James Dolan put out the statement. Now the league comes down and gives them a $250,000 fine, which, yes, sounds like a lot of money. But as we just talked about, if you're James Dolan and you own Cablevision, you might as well tell me
one day of HBO.
Right. Exactly. He'll be fine. He got his point across. So the Rangers now go out and fire out of the blue John Davidson and Jeff Gordon. Now everybody again goes and says, well, hey, this has to be because of the incident Monday night, because they distanced themselves from their boss. They didn't want to do what their boss told them to do. Well, James Dolan comes out and says, no, that's not true. The issue is that this team has been underachieving and we're not in a rebuild anymore.
You're directly in the middle of a rebuild.
Thank you. You know we're in a rebuild. Now let's talk about this for a minute, and I'm going to try to remain calm here. But I know you don't.
I don't like.
I know calm. You don't like the calm.
Let's go. Let's get rowdy.
I'm going to try. How is it underachieving? How does this team quote unquote underachieve and doesn't play up to their potential when they had 56 games on their schedule in this coronavirus season? Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Yeah. 32 of those 56 games are against the Boston Bruins, the New York Islanders, the Pittsburgh Penguins, the Washington Capitals, and the Rangers have a rookie goalie. That's not underachieving. It's not. What did you expect them to do? Dougie Sticks, I'm going to test you. Back in January, before the season started, the night before, you and I were live, we had Dan Rosen from the NHL.com on the show. And I asked him point blank what I said, which was, do you think the Rangers will make the playoffs in this division? What did Dan Rosen say?
Absolutely not. We're in a rebuild.
Thank you. We're in a rebuild. Why does everybody else see it?
I don't know.
But the goddamn owner of the team. It's not a rebuild. You have a rookie goalie. You're basically in rebuilding mode. You have all these young chips, right? And you're playing 4 of the best teams in the NHL for more than 50% of your schedule. That's not goddamn underachieving. It's not.
You're pretty damn good.
So how do you then say that it had nothing to do with Monday? It had to have something to do with Monday.
That's a lie.
Of course it's a lie.
He's a liar.
Not, which is not the first time. But now it's been out there, and he's saying that, oh, well, this would have happened anyway. He would have been fired at the end of the season after the last game on Saturday in Boston. If it happened then without the Monday night, it would have even been more surprising.
Yeah.
So here we are.
And for the people out there, so James Dolan also is connected to the Knicks as well, correct?
Yes. Now here's the funny thing about that. You know I'm a Knicks fan, and I don't like to say that out loud because it's normally embarrassing. However,
be careful, you won't be allowed in.
I won't be allowed in. But now the Knicks are been great. So it's almost like, James Dolan fixed the Knicks. He was involved, and now he's coming back to the other half of his investment, which is the New York Rangers, and getting involved there. And I just don't you can't tell me it's not tied to Monday. It's awfully coincidental that this thing happened 48 hours before, and then these 2 people are fired. And
why not wait the 3 games that you're not even making the playoffs anyway? Why not just finish the season off of them?
So the argument from James Dolan now, and the hierarchy, the super high hierarchy, if you will, at MSG, is that the Rangers were in a rebuild mode, okay, and they now need to be out of the rebuild mode, and that's what the problem was. If I'm James Dolan, this is what he said. Well, you know what? I'm going to look at this and I'm going to say to myself that the New York Rangers are not in a rebuild anymore, and that's an awfully weird thing to say. But let's look at Jeff Gordon's track record. Now, and we're going to talk about this in a couple minutes because a lot of people sent in questions, and one of the ones I'm going to take is about the coach. Have I been a fan of David Quinn?
About 50%. You've been a fan, but
I'm hot and cold, but I'm more cold.
Yes.
I would be a little bit lower on that, right? So let's talk about the job Jeff Gordon has done. Jeff Gordon came here from the Boston Bruins. He was the assistant general manager up there, and he's done a remarkable job. So you don't know this because I know, don't really follow New York Ranger hockey, especially before you and I were magically intertwined by a twist of fate last summer. That a couple years ago, New York Ranger season ticket holders, including myself, got a letter from the team in the spring of 2018 and said, hey, this is going to be painful. We need to make some changes on the team. We need to rebuild. The short-term future may be bleak, but the long-term future is what we're trying to build for. And we all accepted it, right? Mm-hmm. So if you said to me 3 years ago, here is a look into the future in the Dougie Sticks time machine, and this is what your team roster 3 years from now in 2021 is going to be. This is what the rebuild is going to get you. Would you be happy with it, with where you were? The answer would easily be yes. It's not even close. Now, the Rangers got lucky. Alexis Lafreniere, you know that name because of the draft lotto, and Capo Caco, who are the 2 prize chips, if you will, that they got in the last 2 years. Does Jeff Gordon deserve a ton of credit for that? No. Let's be fair. He doesn't. The Rangers had some luck in a ping pong ball machine that you and I can never get the same luck when we play the lottery on Mega Millions. But the New York Rangers seem to have that luck. Does Jeff Gordon deserve credit for that? No, he fell into that. I get it. However, he still has done a really good job rebuilding. He's traded for Adam Fox, who now is being talked about in his second year as being a possible Norris Trophy winner, which is the award that goes to the best defenseman. He's brought in guys like Keandre Miller, the trade that he brought to Rick Nash to somehow get a first-round pick back from Boston as a rental. He's brought in Ryan Lindgren, who was re-signed yesterday to a 3-year deal. He's made some good moves. So it's a pretty darn big shock that happened, and it has to be tied in some way to Monday night. You can't tell me that Monday night is not affiliated with it. Now, let's try to move forward here from this, unless you have any questions. And we're gonna.
If they didn't want to be part of this like crazy statement, why is that the reason to get fired?
Well, I think it was the fact. Again, they're not going to admit that is, but I do think at the same time, he's unhappy that his team president and his general manager are publicly not supporting him. So, That is why.
We also have a comment from our studio audience.
Okay.
After the Rangers bash the NHL, I don't think they'll have the same draft luck.
That is
anymore.
that is 100% right. I said that the other day. I will get, and the Rangers will be in the ping pong ball lotto because they didn't make the playoffs.
Yeah.
You can bet your mortgage this year the Rangers are not getting the top pick or anything close to it.
Wow.
If the Rangers, and again, their odds won't be great because they didn't have as bad of a record as a lot of the other teams. But if the Rangers are like projected to pick 14th, guess what? They're picking 14th. There is no chance the Rangers are getting that luck again. And they don't deserve it because the last 2 years they've had luck. But especially after this, you can bet your mortgage, Dougie Sticks, that it ain't happening. So Chris Drury now becomes the team president and general manager. And when it first came out, a lot of people weren't sure if this was an interim tag that Chris Drury was going to have, and it's not. So I am wearing today, if you're following us, and I forgot to turn off my ringer, which is on me. If you are following us online today, you will see I am wearing a Ranger jersey. I'm going to turn around, and I will tell you the jersey I am wearing. Dougie Sticks, go ahead.
Drury.
Chris Drury. I love Chris Drury.
Nice.
Chris Drury went, well, but hold on. I love Chris Drury. He went to Boston University, which is where I went to school, although he graduated the year before I got there. He's been a winner all his life. He won a national championship at BU. He's won his Little League World Series. I don't know if you know this. You ever watch the Little League World Series in August? He was a little kid. He was on the Trumbull, Connecticut team, and he won there. He's a proven winner. He's a great leader. Some people have compared his leadership abilities to some really high-profile names in sports. So he is now the new general manager of the New York Rangers. Now, is he the next Steve Yzerman, right? Which is a guy that you would hope, a former player like Chris Drury. Steve Yzerman had a lot of success building up Tampa, and he's trying to rebuild the Detroit organization. Is Chris Drury a rising star? He could be. He got interviewed for 2 of the GM jobs this past year in Florida and Pittsburgh. He turned them both down. It sounded like he was at times was the front runner in both of those processes. So could Chris Drury be a really good GM in the future? Absolutely he could. But you can't tell me that you know that. Why? He just hasn't done it before, right? But we do know that the word around the NHL from team executives is, look, Chris Drury is a really smart guy. Now, he does a lot of things close to the chest. He's a quiet guy. There was an article yesterday in the New York Post about how meticulous he is and how he crosses his T's and dots his I's and all that stuff, which you want in a general manager. So we don't really know what Chris Drury is going to be. The other thing we don't know is David Quinn now. Is David Quinn still going to be the coach of this team? That is not a safe bet to say. David Quinn came here in 2018. He just finished his 3rd year. He has a 5-year deal. So if you're David Quinn right now and you get fired, which is probably what's going to happen, you'd be annoyed, but you're still going to get paid now for 2 years that you're not even coaching. So it's not really the worst thing. The only thing I will say, if you are a supporter of David Quinn and you want him to stay on this team, is that he could be here because him and Chris Drury both have the same thing that I have, which is a Boston University connection. Chris Drury went to school there. David Quinn coached there. So they are familiar with each other. But David Quinn, as I'm sorry, right now, he is not the right person to coach this team.
Wow. You got even colder.
Well, you know what? Here's the thing. David Quinn was brought here to when he was hired in the beginning of the rebuild was to develop young talent, right? So if I sat here and I said after the 3rd year, let's look at the talent and has he developed him? Has Capo Caco in 2 seasons gotten a lot better? No. He hasn't been terrible, but he hasn't lived up to the hype, which is fine. But if your MO is that I'm good at developing young talent and I have a guy that he came here and people thought he was the next coming of Jesus, you should be able to develop that, right?
Yeah.
There's been other cases with some people. I don't want to get into Lafreniere. Lafreniere had a very good second half of the season once they figured out what line he was playing on. But a lot of these other young guys, like they just haven't come along if this is what you're known for. So we'll see what happens with David Quinn. What sounds like is going to definitely happen is the Rangers are going to go through exit interviews this week where the general manager, now Chris Drury, sits down with the players one-on-one and interviews them and tries to get a good feel for how they feel about the coach and the system he plays. And Chris Drury will make a decision off of that. But if you're Chris Drury, I'm not sure how you sit here and expect David Quinn in year 4 to exponentially grow from where he was in the past 3 years. He's not. And if you're a new GM, you want to hire your own guy. Now, who that guy is, well, we're not going to sit there and go into that because David Quinn is still employed. But I do have some names that we will throw out there in the
All
coming
right.
weeks if it does become a job opening.
Gotcha.
So I want to take a question that we got yesterday because it was about David Quinn. And it was, I know you're not a huge fan of Quinn, so if James Dolan forces Drury to rehire Torts, how do you see that playing out given his propensity to alienate star players and underdeveloped young talent? So John Tortorella is a name now that is resurfacing. You don't know John Tortorella because that was before you met me, so you didn't know hockey coaches. But John Tortorella coached here. He had a lot of success here in the 5 years he was here. He went to the Eastern Conference Finals in 2012 against the Devils. Where they lost in 6 games, which our studio audience over here probably remembers and enjoys that. But here's the thing on Torts. And again, I'm not going to get into like a lot of the coaching stuff because he's still employed. John Tortorella is a worse fit for this job. John Tortorella is not the sort of guy that should develop young talent. The reality is James Dolan may think that we're not in a rebuild anymore. We are. So you still have a lot of young players. So having John Tortorella come in, we don't want Capo Caco and Lafreniere blocking shots. That's not what they're here for. And that's the system that John Tortorella plays. Because if you remember, which you don't, Dougie Sticks, when he was here in his previous employment with Madison Square Garden, we had Dan Girardi and Mark Stahl blocking shots all day. The system worked, but that's not what this team is built for right now. And you also had Henrik Lundqvist in that back in those days, and Igor Shesterkin is not there yet.
True.
If Dougie said it's true, it's got to be true. Yeah. So it's been a crazy week here of New York Rangers stuff. We apologize we were not on last week. I'm going to take a couple of the other questions because I know I told people I would get to a bunch of them. How much does the lack of the New York Rangers having an enforcer, how much did that have to do with this? It probably had something to do with it. Look, the Rangers for years have not had the Joe Kocur, Ty Domi, old-time Bob Probert player where, you had a guy that or Ryan Reeves comes to mind, or Curtis Gabriel, who we had on the show back in November, if you remember, who plays for San Jose. He's an enforcer. The Rangers have never had that. They've just never been tough. And there were a couple things that were written last week that James Dolan had said to John Davidson and Jeff Gordon that you need over time to get a player like that, and they never did. And the Tom Wilson incident happened. So I'm not sure that was the driving force behind it. And we also don't know if those conversations between Gordon and James Dolan with the lack of enforcer is true. We don't have any way to validate it. But I don't think it helped. The other question is, and I was debating whether we're going to take it. We'll take it. We're not going to do Ranger offseason stuff yet. We'll get there. Trust me, we will get there. But this season just ended 3 days ago. So would you remove the untouchable tag from Philip Hedl? And what do you now do with Ryan Strome? So Philip Hedl was a first-round pick about 4 years ago and remains the third-line center on this team. Normally, Dougie Sticks, when you have a player who's young and he's got a lot of potential, you hold on to it, and he's a value. But now that you're starting to see that there are the signs that maybe he's not as good as we thought, he's not untouchable. If another team wants to come out and make a deal for him, go ahead and do that. I wouldn't be looking at Philip Hedl right now and saying he's untouchable. With Ryan Strome, that's going to be that's a harder question to answer. I'm not sure what the Rangers do. I would probably say he's not back with the Rangers next year, but we'll see. But you know what? If he goes elsewhere, he's going to have no problem getting a job. He's had a really good year, but you got to remember he's also played with Artemi Panarin on his left wing, and that helps the point production.
Absolutely.
Right. It would be like playing with you in lacrosse, like when you had your lacrosse glory days.
Oh yeah.
Like those people who played with Dougie Sticks.
Yeah, especially when I had the ball at X. What do they call it in hockey? X is the behind the net in lacrosse.
Behind the net. They just call it behind the net.
Behind the net.
Well, sometimes they call it Gretzky's office because Wayne Gretzky made his career of setting up there, and then he was such a good passer, he would find the open guy.
Yeah, so I definitely had a corner office back there.
And now you're in the corner over here in our studio.
Absolutely.
I tell you, man,
it's full circle.
It's full circle. Living the dream.
Just sending you assists all day, baby.
One day at a time. So to recap it all, the Rangers did not underachieve. They finished where we thought they would, which was 5th. I think Dan Rosen and I predicted they'd either be 5th or 6th. They were not making the playoffs with the division as hard as it was. And then, it also brings the question of next year in the NHL, are we back to our normal divisions, or are we still in this, East Division where you have these 8 teams? So that'll be another thing to monitor. The Ranger offseason, I would have told you 2 weeks ago, would have been interesting. Now it's going to be super interesting
Mhm.
and it's going to be something to watch. But Chris Drury, look, you know what? Jeff Gordon, we can't sit here and he's gone, so nothing we can do. So we're going to focus on Chris Drury, and again, he seems like he's meticulous. He knows the game. He makes it pretty clear in his press conference last week. He's got one goal, and that's to bring the Stanley Cup to the Garden, which means you and I can host a live show at the Stanley Cup Parade down the Canyon of Heroes there in New York City. So you know what? We're going to let Chris Drury hire his guy if that's the decision he wants to make with his coach. Let's see what he does with some of the players, and we'll let time tell.
Yeah, I agree.
You do. I tell you, this would have been the perfect day for you to call out sick.
Why would I call out sick?
Well, because this is all Ranger stuff. This is
you made me a Ranger fan.
I do. We need to
get. You trying to kick me out now?
No,
Does Ranger talk?
No. I just know it's not. It's not like
great episode.
I'm just saying it's not right up your alley. That's all. But I feel bad. But we're now going to move past the Ranger stuff.
No, not at all.
And the fiasco of the past week,
you had to talk about the fiasco. There's a lot of fiascos,
which I'm actually starting to be really tired of hearing about now. I just kind of want to move on. It's been a long week. The NHL playoffs get started this coming weekend. And we'll spend some time on that in the coming weeks because if you remember, when we first came on the show, we had NHL playoffs in the summer because it was the Corona. So we will be focusing on that. And in the East Conference, we have a couple really good, interesting scenarios. You're going to have the Pittsburgh Penguins, who finishes the number 1 seed, versus the New York Islanders, who finishes the 4. Now, look, I hate the Pittsburgh Penguins.
Mm-hmm.
Matter of fact, when I look at the when I look at the East playoffs, you have the Penguins versus the Islanders and the Capitals versus the Bruins. I hate all 4 teams. I have a hard time rooting for any of them. I don't like. I look at them like, well, I want the Islanders to lose. But if the Islanders lose, that means the Penguins wins. That sucks.
Yeah.
And then I look at it, I'm like, well, I want the Penguins to lose, but then the Islanders, I hate it. So I'm just going to focus on the fact that out of those 4 teams, in the next few weeks, 3 of them are going to lose.
Which is the team that you would want out of those 4?
Out of those 4?
Yeah.
Pittsburgh, Washington, Boston, or the Islanders? Well, it's certainly not the Islanders, and it's certainly not Pittsburgh. So the fact that they're playing head-to-head, someone has to win, but I'm going to focus on the fact that someone's going to lose. Out of Washington or Boston? Oh, God. Oh, I'm not sure. You know what? Maybe Washington, because I've never hated Ovechkin.
We hate them now.
We hate them because of what happened last week. Yeah.
So maybe Boston, because you have roots in Boston, right?
I don't have roots. I went to school there.
Yeah, you got some Boston love.
And the years I went to school there, the Rangers were god-awful, and the Bruins were good. So I used to go to Bruins games because they had a thing for BU students where you could go to a Bruins or a Celtics game for $10.
Nice.
But they literally sat you, and not an exaggeration, they sat you in the top row of the Fleet Center, which is what it was called. And you used to sit in the top row. You had the worst seats, but it was $10, and you would get on the T, which is the subway up there, for 85 cents, and you have a night out, and you got to go see some hockey. The Pittsburgh Islanders series, man. I'm not even going to pick who I want to win. I hate them both. The other series, well, let's do this. Let's pick who I think will win. Let's do what I said and be objective.
Okay.
Leave biases out the door of the Undefeated Media Studios and try and pick who's going to win.
All right.
Pittsburgh versus the Islanders. You know what? They're both coached very well. Mike Sullivan, obviously, in Pittsburgh. Barry Trotz, who's probably the best coach in the NHL with the Islanders. Ooh, God, I don't know who wins that. I'm going to look to our studio audience. Do you think the Islanders? Yeah, I mean, look, I could argue the Islanders. Pittsburgh, you know what? Pittsburgh still has the firepower. They still have Gensel and Crosby, obviously, and Malkin. But their goaltending has been suspect here. I'm going to go with the Islanders also. And it's, again, sickening for me to even say that, but I'm going to say that. Do you want to make a prediction?
Yeah, I'm going to say Pittsburgh so I can laugh in you guys' faces.
That's fine. Because you are the resident hockey expert on the Mind Your Pucking Business podcast. On the other side of that bracket, on the East, you have the Washington Capitals versus the Bruins. You know, the interesting story there is Zdeno Chara, who played, the majority of his career in Boston and left Boston last year, now plays in Washington. So now he's going to end up facing his old team, the Boston Bruins, in the first round. That's a very good series. Both those teams are so good. I'm going to go with the Capitals. I'm going to go just because they have home ice, although home ice doesn't really even mean much in hockey. I'm going to go with the Capitals. So I'm going to go with a rematch of last year's playoff series of the Islanders and the Capitals in the second round. But again, it's nauseating, and I want to vomit talking about these teams. I'm not even gonna lie. So the North situation. Now, here's where this gets interesting. Now, you may get into this.
Well, we talked about it. So what happened?
No, this is the Canadian division.
We talked about it last week. What we think's going to happen.
Oh,
so now
we
that we
did.
know what's going to happen.
Look at you, God.
Bro. Come on.
This guy is like, man. So the Toronto Maple Leafs, and give them kudos, they have clinched the number 1 seed. Now, again, the Toronto Maple Leafs remind me in a way of the New York Rangers in 1994. Like, they've never won. They haven't won in forever. Like, they're overdue, and now they're good. So we congratulate Toronto on getting the number 1 seed. But if you're then bounced in the first round, I mean, it means nothing. Mm-hmm. They are either going to play, depending how the season ends up tonight, they're either going to play Winnipeg or Montreal. And you want them to play Montreal because Montreal and Toronto in a playoff series would be amazing. These two teams hate each other. Like, it is probably one of, if not the best rivalries in the entire league. So if you could get a Battle of Ontario in the first round, that would be awesome. Nice. The Edmonton Oilers, Connor McDavid is unhuman. He's not human at all. And he continues at this ridiculous pace. He's going to possibly get 100 points. They will be the 2 seed. And so the 3 and the 4 is up for grabs between Winnipeg and Montreal. But let's hope, if you're a hockey fan, let's hope that it ends up being Toronto, Montreal. Like you remembered, it's got to be sticking with people. If it's sticking with you, Dougie Sticks, right? Yeah. All right. In the West, you have the 4 teams that you know are in, but seeding is not done. And Vegas is going to be the 1 or the 2. Colorado is going to be 1, 2, or 3. Minnesota will be 2 or 3, and St. Louis will be 4. It looks like Vegas will be 1 and playing St. Louis, which is a good series, right? Vegas is always good. St. Louis just won the Cup 2 years ago. And Colorado, Minnesota would be a good series, but it's hard to go against the Avalanche. The Avalanche are really young and they're loaded, and particularly with their star, Nathan McKinnon. The other division that we have left is the Central Division, and those are set, those matchups. Carolina versus Nashville. You got to like Carolina. Carolina's had a good year. And look, Carolina destroyed the Rangers in that play-in round last year. So they do have some experience as well. They did give Boston a little bit of a run last year in that playoff series that they were eliminated in. The games were closer than the series score was. So, and Nashville really has not been that consistent. So you kind of got to like Carolina. The other series is really interesting. And that is the Battle of the Sunshine State, with the Florida Panthers, the number 2 seed, battling the defending champion Tampa Bay Lightning. Who do you like in that series, Dougie Sticks?
Tampa Bay Lightning.
Yeah, you know what? It's a great series. Florida is young. They're coached so well. They have Joe Quenneville. But it's hard to go against the defending champions. And Tampa has a lot of their pieces back. So it's going to be hard to go against Tampa. So I would like Carolina and Tampa in that series. And then next week, once we have those other 2 divisions, North and the West, where we don't know for sure who's playing who, we'll make some predictions there.
Nice.
Are you ready for some playoff hockey?
Absolutely.
Let's talk real quick. Were you happy with the NFL draft? It's not
nothing. It wasn't a yay or a nay. It was just average.
The only thing that was exciting to me, well, I wouldn't say exciting because I didn't like it. The only part of it that was what's the word, suspenseful, was when the Eagles traded up to grab the receiver from Alabama, so the Giants didn't get him.
Yeah, that stunk.
Which was annoying because you and I kind of root for both New York teams, and we do not root for Philadelphia.
Absolutely not.
Or Filthy-delphia, as they call it. So yeah, that was kind of annoying.
Yeah, that was a stupid move.
Yeah.
They just did it just to spite. It wasn't like they wanted them.
Right.
They got a lot of receivers in Philly.
They do. But the question is their quarterback Jalen Hurts going to be okay? And their new head coach seems a little bit weird.
True.
So we'll see. So we will wrap that up, and the NFL comes back. The schedule, which the NFL schedule is the only league that does like this really cool schedule release, like people care, and they do, because you want to see who's playing on Monday Night Football. You want to see who's playing Thanksgiving Day. That comes out tomorrow night at 8 p.m. So you can watch that on the NFL Network. Although I have found with that in previous years, it's a little bit weird. They'll tell you to watch the show at 8 o'clock, and they'll run through it. But if you do a search like at 8 o'clock, like Giants schedule, it'll be leaked every year. It's always out there. So you actually don't have to watch that show.
True.
Watch tomorrow.
I think I think the schedule's going to change a lot because of, like, Aaron Rodgers, like, saying he's not going to
Mhm.
play and stuff. Because there's a lot of, like, Monday night games, like Rodgers versus Mahomes, and if Rodgers is
Yeah.
playing for Green Bay, they're not going to make that
Right.
Monday night game.
So you know what? That's a good point. With the uncertainty of Green Bay, I bet you they're not getting a lot of primetime games. We will get Old Man Who Bets. By the way, your buddy Old Man Who Bets has a podcast now. Did you know that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we're gonna have to get him on the show once football
Absolutely.
comes back, and he can talk to us about his predictions for
Yeah.
the season. We're gonna do in the summer a fantasy football preview show.
Nice.
Again, don't listen to me with my track record. I'm always bounced, but you had better luck than I did.
Lost by 1 point.
Let's
point.
Let's not go back to rough times. Let's not
true.
let's not rip off the
It made me
Band-Aid.
cry.
Let's not rip the Band-Aid on a wound that's not healed.
True.
Anything else, Dougie Sticks?
No, great show. Good job.
Yeah, we'll try to dissect it as best we can. The New York Rangers, again, let's hope that they can they're heading in the right direction with Chris Drury. Let's put our faith in him. And again, any questions you have, you can send any feedback to mypbshow@gmail.com. The other place we got some questions, I don't know if you saw, was on Instagram.
Yeah.
Some people DM'd us. I feel like I'm hip saying that.
Yeah.
DM'd us.
Yeah.
Some questions. Some of the ones that I took were from Instagram. And we'll go from there. So we will be back in 2 weeks. We'll have NHL playoffs in full swing. We'll know probably by then on the David Quinn fate, if he's employed by the Rangers or not. And if he's not, we'll have a list of names of possible replacements I've come up with if they haven't filled it already. And we'll go from there.
Nice.
Sound good?
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day and week.